The ships rose from every continent on Earth. Millions of humans watched through small windows as their home planet grew smaller and smaller. Children cried without understanding why. Adults cried because they understood too well. This was the end of everything they had known. Commander Daniel Hayes stood on the bridge of the colony ship Endurance. He was 43 years old with gray hair at his temples and tired eyes that had seen too much in the past few months. Behind him, his crew worked silently at their stations. No one spoke. There was nothing to say. 3 months ago, the Velthari Dominion had arrived in the Sol system. They came with 10,000 warships that blocked out the stars. They came with weapons that could crack planets in half. They came with a message that left no room for negotiation. Humans were too dangerous. Humans were too aggressive. Humans spread too fast and fought too hard, and refused to accept their place in the galactic order. The Dominion had watched humanity for 200 years. Ever since humans developed faster than light travel, they had seen enough. "Leave Earth," the alien said. "Leave your solar system. Go to the edges of the galaxy where no one wants to live. Go there and stay there forever. If you refuse, we will destroy every human being on every world you have touched." The governments of Earth argued for weeks. Some wanted to fight. Some wanted to negotiate. Some wanted to surrender completely and hope for mercy. In the end, there was no real choice. The Velthari had technology that made human weapons look like toys. A single Dominion battleship could destroy an entire human fleet. Fighting meant extinction, so humanity chose exile. Daniel watched the planet grow smaller on his view screen. He could still see the blue oceans and green continents. He could still see the white clouds swirling over the Pacific. Somewhere down there was the house where he grew up. Somewhere down there was the grave where his wife was buried. He would never see either again. A small hand tugged at his uniform. He looked down to see his daughter Lucy standing beside him. She was 5 years old, with brown hair, and her mother's eyes. She was the only reason Daniel had agreed to command this mission, instead of staying behind to fight and die. "Daddy, where are we going?" Daniel picked her up and held her against his chest. She was so small, so fragile. The galaxy was going to be hard on her. "We're going to find a new home, sweetheart, but I want to stay on Earth. I want to go back to our house. I want to see Grandma." Bersand. 89. Daniel closed his eyes. His mother had refused to leave. She was 78 years old, and she said she was too old to start over on some strange planet. She said Earth was her home, and she would die on Earth. The Velthari had promised that humans who stayed behind would be relocated to special reserves. Daniel did not believe them, but he could not force his mother onto the ship. "Grandma's going to be fine," he lied. "And we'll find a new house, a better house, with a big yard where you can play." Lucy looked at him with those serious eyes that children sometimes have. "Will we ever come back?" Daniel wanted to say yes. He wanted to promise her that someday, somehow, humanity would return to reclaim their birthplace. But he was a military man, and he understood the reality. The Velthari had won. They had won completely and permanently. Humans would spend the rest of their existence on the edges of the galaxy, forgotten and alone. "I don't know, Lucy. Maybe someday." She put her head on his shoulder and closed her eyes. Within minutes, she was asleep. Daniel held her and watched Earth disappear into the darkness. The fleet commander, Admiral Patricia Long, appeared on his screen. She was on the lead ship, the vessel called New Beginning. Her face was calm, but her eyes were red. "All ships have cleared Earth orbit. The Velthari escort fleet is guiding us toward the designated hyperspace corridor." Daniel nodded. "How long until we reach the exile zone?" 8 months of travel. "The Dominion has assigned us 12 worlds in the outer rim. They say the planets are habitable but difficult. High gravity, extreme temperatures, toxic atmospheres. They expect us to struggle. They expect us to die." Patricia was quiet for a moment. "Yes, I believe they do. They think they're being merciful by giving us a slow death instead of a quick one." Daniel looked at his sleeping daughter. "Then we'll have to prove them wrong." The journey took 8 months, just as the Admiral had said. 8 months of traveling through the cold darkness between stars. 8 months of rationing food and water. 8 months of watching people slowly lose hope. Some gave up entirely. The medical staff reported increasing cases of depression and suicide. People who had lost everything on Earth could not find a reason to keep living. The ship's counselors worked around the clock, but they could not save everyone. Others found strength in anger. Daniel heard them talking in the corridors late at night. They wanted revenge. They wanted to build weapons and ships, and go back to fight the Velthari. They wanted to make the aliens pay for what they had done. Daniel understood the anger. He felt it too, burning in his chest like a small flame that never went out. But he knew that revenge was a fantasy. Humanity had centuries of catching up to do before they could challenge the Dominion. When the fleet finally arrived at their new home, Daniel gathered his crew on the observation deck. Through the windows, they could see their assigned planet. It was a gray and brown world covered in mountains and deserts. The atmosphere was thick with dust, and the gravity was 30% higher than Earth. "This is New Providence," Daniel said. "This is our home now. I know it doesn't look like much. I know it's going to be hard. But our ancestors survived ice ages and plagues and wars. They crossed oceans in wooden boats. They built civilizations from nothing. If they could do it, so can we." His crew looked at him with tired eyes and broken spirits. They had lost everything. Their families, their homes, their entire world. They had every reason to give up, but Daniel saw something else in their faces too. He saw a stubborn determination that refused to die. He saw the same spark that had driven humans to explore and build and conquer since the beginning of their history. The Velthari thought they were sending humanity to die. They were wrong. Daniel held Lucy close and looked at the harsh world below. Somewhere in his heart, a promise took shape. His generation might not live to see it. His daughter's generation might not live to see it. But someday, humans would return to Earth. Someday, they would reclaim what was taken from them. And on that day, the Velthari would learn what it truly meant to fear humanity. The colony ship Endurance began its descent toward the surface. Below, a new chapter of human history was about to begin. 3,000 years passed. On the colony world of New Providence, the morning sun rose over a city that would have amazed the original settlers. Towers of glass and steel reached toward the sky. Flying vehicles moved between buildings in perfect patterns. Gardens filled with both earth plants and alien vegetation covered every rooftop. Ambassador Kate Morrison stood at her office window and watched the city come alive. She was 240 years old, which was considered middle-aged by current human standards. Her hair was dark and her body was strong and healthy. She looked like a woman of 30 by the standards of old Earth. 3,000 years of evolution had changed humanity in ways the Velthari never expected. Kate turned away from the window as her assistant entered the room. His name was Peter Grant and he was young, barely 60 years old. He carried a data tablet filled with the morning reports. "The census results are in," Peter said. "Total human population across all 12 colony worlds is now 47 billion. Kate nodded. The original exile fleet had carried only 20 million people. Now, humanity had spread across their assigned planets, like water filling every available space. And the other reports? Peter scrolled through his tablet. The mining operations on Ashfall have exceeded targets by 40%. The agricultural output on Greendale is up 12%. And the shipyards on New Providence completed 300 new vessels last month. Kate smiled. The Velthari had given humanity the worst planets in the galaxy. Worlds with crushing gravity and poison air, and temperatures that could kill in minutes. They thought these conditions would slowly destroy the human spirit. Instead, humanity adapted. On high-gravity worlds, human bones grew denser, and muscles grew stronger with each generation. On toxic planets, human lungs developed filters that could process almost any atmosphere. On frozen worlds, human bodies learned to regulate temperature with incredible efficiency. On volcanic planets, human skin became resistant to heat that would cook other species alive. The changes were not just physical. Human minds had evolved too. Their reaction times were faster. Their ability to process information was greater. Their creativity and problem-solving skills had reached levels that seemed almost impossible. Kate remembered what her grandmother had told her when she was a child. Her grandmother had been born on the original colony ship, the daughter of Commander Daniel Hayes himself. She had lived through the hardest years when colonists died by the thousands trying to tame their new worlds. The Velthari thought they were punishing us, her grandmother had said. They thought they were sending us to suffer and die. But they forgot something important about humans. We don't break under pressure. We get stronger. Dr. Nathan Cole arrived at Kate's office an hour later. He was the leading scientist on New Providence. A man who had spent his entire career studying how humanity had changed since the exile. He was carrying a folder thick with research data. I finished the comparison study, Nathan said as he sat down. I compared our current physical and mental capabilities with records from old Earth. And Nathan opened his folder and spread documents across Kate's desk. The results are remarkable. Average human strength has increased by 300%. Bone density is comparable to titanium alloys. Our immune systems can fight off diseases that would kill any other known species. Our neural processing speed is 40% faster than our ancestors. Kate studied the documents. What about compared to the Velthari? Nathan hesitated. That's where it gets interesting. Based on all available data about Dominion species, a single human soldier could now defeat approximately 40 Velthari warriors in direct combat. The number hung in the air between them. 40-1, Kate repeated. At minimum, our pilots have faster reflexes. Our engineers are more creative. Our tacticians think in ways that Velthari computers cannot predict. We have become something entirely new. End quote. Kate walked to her window again. Somewhere out there, beyond the stars she could see, Earth was still waiting. The planet where humanity began. The home they had been forced to leave 3,000 years ago. Have you shared this research with the Council? Not yet. I wanted to show you first. Kate was quiet for a long moment. The Council of 12 governed all human colonies. They made decisions that affected billions of lives. When they learned what Nathan had discovered, everything would change. Call a meeting, she said finally. Today, the Council met in the Great Hall of New Providence, a building constructed from materials that did not exist on old Earth. The 12 leaders sat around a circular table while Nathan presented his findings. When he finished, the room was silent. Council Chair Ryan Parker was the first to speak. He was an older man, nearly 300 years old, with white hair and sharp eyes that missed nothing. You're telling us that we've become stronger than the species that exiled us. Nathan nodded. Significantly stronger. The harsh conditions that were supposed to destroy us instead forced us to evolve at an accelerated rate. Every generation was stronger than the one before. We are no longer the same species that left Earth. Megan Torres, the youngest council member at only 90 years old, leaned forward. So what do we do with this power? Do we just keep building and growing out here on the edge of the galaxy? Or do we do something about what was done to us? The question sparked immediate debate. Some council members argued for caution. The Dominion was vast and powerful. Humanity had grown strong, but the aliens still had numbers and resources that humans could not match. War would be risky. Others argued for action. 3,000 years was long enough. Humanity had paid their debt 100 times over. It was time to reclaim their birthplace and show the galaxy what they had become. Ryan listened to all the arguments without speaking. When the debate finally quieted, he stood and walked to the window. Outside, the city of New Providence stretched to the horizon. Millions of humans lived and worked there, descendants of the refugees who had fled Earth in fear. I remember a story my grandmother told me, Ryan said quietly. She was on the original colony ship. She was just a little girl when they left Earth. She said her father, Commander Hayes, made a promise. He promised that someday humanity would return home. He turned to face the council. 3,000 years ago, we were forced to leave because we were weak. We had no choice. We had to accept whatever the Velthari decided for us. But now, we have a choice. Now we can decide our own future. Ryan looked at each council member in turn. I say we go home. I say we reclaim what was taken from us. Not through conquest or revenge, but because Earth belongs to humanity. It always has. It always will. The vote was unanimous. 6 months later, the first human fleet in 3,000 years began the long journey back to Earth. They carried the hopes and dreams of 47 billion people. They carried the memory of everyone who had suffered and died during the exile. And they carried a message for the Velthari Dominion. Humanity was coming home. And nothing in the galaxy was going to stop them. The human fleet emerged from hyperspace at the edge of the Sol system. 300 warships arranged in perfect formation, their hulls gleaming with technology that had been developed over 3,000 years of isolation. At the center of the fleet was the flagship New Dawn, the largest and most powerful vessel humanity had ever built. Admiral Chris Bennett stood on the bridge and looked at the stars. Somewhere ahead, hidden by distance, was the sun that had warmed humanity's first steps. Somewhere ahead was Earth. Admiral, we're detecting a Velthari patrol fleet. 200 ships, positioned at the system boundary. Chris nodded slowly. They had expected this. The Dominion had maintained a blockade around the Sol system for 3,000 years. They called it a quarantine zone. They said it was for the protection of galactic civilization. Open a channel. The communication officer worked at his console. A moment later, an alien face appeared on the main view screen. The Velthari were tall beings, with silver scales and 4 arms. Their eyes were large and dark, designed to see in wavelengths that humans could not perceive. Human vessels, you are entering a restricted zone. The Sol system is under permanent quarantine by order of the Dominion Council. Turn back immediately, or we will be forced to take action. Chris studied the alien commander. He could see the confidence in the creature's posture, the absolute certainty that humans would obey. After all, humans had always obeyed before. They had no choice. This is Admiral Chris Bennett of the Human Colonial Fleet. We are returning to our home system to reclaim the planet Earth. We do not wish conflict, but we will not turn back. The Velthari commander made a sound that might have been laughter. You cannot be serious. Your primitive species has no right to challenge Dominion authority. If you do not withdraw, we will destroy your entire fleet. Chris smiled. It was not a friendly expression. You're welcome to try. The channel closed. On the view screen, the Velthari ships began to move into attack formation. They outnumbered the human fleet, but their movements were slow and predictable. They followed patterns that had worked against other species for thousands of years. Lieutenant Amy Chen sat in the cockpit of her fighter craft, waiting for the launch order. She was one of the best pilots in the fleet, a woman who had trained her entire life for this moment. Her hands rested lightly on the controls, perfectly steady. All fighter squadrons, this is the Admiral. Remember your training. Remember why we're here. Our ancestors were forced to leave this place because they had no power. Now we do. Show the Dominion what humanity has become. The fighter bay doors opened and Amy launched into the void. The battle began with the Velthari firing first. Streams of energy weapons crossed the distance between the fleets, aimed at the human ships with what the aliens believed was perfect accuracy. They expected the human vessels to shatter under the assault. Instead, the human ships moved. They moved with speed and precision that the Velthari had never seen before. Human pilots reacted to incoming fire with reflexes that seemed impossible. Ships that should have been destroyed were suddenly somewhere else, their own weapons firing with deadly accuracy. Amy flew through the chaos like she was dancing. Her enhanced senses could track dozens of targets at once. Her evolved body could handle acceleration that would kill any Velthari pilot instantly. She spun her fighter between enemy ships, her weapons tearing through their shields like they were made of paper. Enemy cruiser disabled, moving to next target. Around her, other human pilots were doing the same thing. They flew circles around the Velthari fleet, striking from angles the aliens could not anticipate. They worked together with coordination that came from generations of training and evolution. On the new dawn, Admiral Bennett watched the battle unfold. The tactical display showed human ships cutting through the Velthari formation, like knives through soft bread. Enemy vessels were being disabled at a rate of 10-1. "Sir, the Velthari command ship is trying to retreat." Chris considered for a moment. He could order his ships to pursue and destroy. He could eliminate the entire patrol fleet and send a message to the Dominion that would be written in fire and blood. But that was not why they had come. Let them go. Disable any ship that continues to fight, but let the rest retreat. We're not here for revenge. The order was transmitted across the fleet. Human ships pulled back from enemies that were trying to flee, focusing only on those that continued the attack. The battle lasted 6 hours. When it ended, 93% of the Velthari fleet had been disabled or destroyed. Human casualties were less than 200. The numbers were so uneven that some crew members struggled to believe them. Amy landed her fighter on the New Dawn's flight deck. Her craft was damaged, scarred by weapons fire that had come close but never quite hit. She climbed out of the cockpit and found her commanding officer waiting. "Outstanding work, Lieutenant. You personally disabled 12 enemy cruisers." Amy looked at her hands. They were steady now, but she could feel them starting to shake. In a single afternoon, she had killed thousands of alien beings. She had done it because she had to, because they were trying to stop humanity from going home. But the weight of it sat heavy on her shoulders. "How do you feel?" her commander asked. Amy thought about the question. She thought about her great-great-grandmother, who had been on the original exile fleet. She thought about all the generations who had lived and died on harsh worlds, dreaming of a home they would never see. "I feel like we just announced ourselves to the galaxy. I feel like nothing is ever going to be the same." Her commander nodded. "You're right. The Dominion has ruled this part of the galaxy for 10,000 years. They've never lost a battle like this. When word spreads about what happened here today, everything will change." Amy looked out the flight deck window at the stars. Somewhere ahead was Earth. Somewhere ahead was the home her ancestors had been forced to abandon. They were so close now. "What happens next?" she asked. "Now we keep moving. The Velthari will send more ships. The entire Dominion will mobilize against us. But we didn't come this far to stop." The human fleet regrouped and continued its journey toward the inner solar system. Behind them, the survivors of the Velthari patrol fled toward Dominion space, carrying news that would shake the foundations of galactic civilization. The humans had returned, and they were stronger than anyone had ever imagined possible. In the great halls of the Dominion Council, alarms spread like wildfire. Emergency meetings were called. Military commanders were summoned. For the first time in 10,000 years, the rulers of the galaxy felt something they had almost forgotten: fear. Earth hung in the void like a jewel, blue and white, and heartbreakingly beautiful. The human fleet had finally arrived at the planet that had given birth to their species. For many crew members, it was the first time they had ever seen their ancestral home. Admiral Chris Bennett stood on the observation deck of the New Dawn, surrounded by his senior officers. No one spoke. They simply stared at the world below, trying to process the emotions that flooded through them. But something was wrong. The continents were not where they should be. The coastlines were different. Even from orbit, they could see that Earth had been changed. The Velthari had not simply occupied the planet, they had transformed it. "What did they do?" whispered Dr. Laura Kim, the chief science officer. Chris shook his head slowly. "They made it theirs. They erased us." The fleet descended through the atmosphere and found a world that was both familiar and alien. The forests were filled with plants from Velthari worlds. The oceans had been reshaped and filled with alien fish. Great cities built in the Dominion style covered areas where human civilization had once stood. There were no signs that humans had ever existed here. No monuments, no ruins, no memories. 3,000 years of Velthari occupation had wiped away every trace of human history. Laura was part of the first landing team to touch Earth soil. She was a xenobiologist who had spent her career studying alien life forms. But nothing had prepared her for this moment. The shuttle landed in what had once been North America, In a valley surrounded by mountains that had been artificially created by Velthari terraforming, Laura stepped onto the ground and felt her eyes fill with tears. "This is it," she said quietly. "This is where we came from." The other team members spread out, scanning the environment with their equipment. Everything they found was alien. The air was different. The soil was different. Even the microorganisms in the ground had been replaced with Velthari species. Laura knelt down and began to dig. She pushed aside the imported soil, going deeper and deeper. The others watched her, confused by what she was doing. Then she found it. Beneath a foot of alien dirt, there was a layer of dark earth. Real earth soil, preserved under the weight of everything the Velthari had put on top of it. Laura picked up a handful and examined it closely. Through her scanner, she could see terrestrial bacteria still alive after 3,000 years. "It's still here," she breathed. "They tried to erase us, but the planet remembers. It's still alive." The news spread quickly through the fleet. Despite everything the Velthari had done, traces of old Earth survived beneath the surface. It was a small victory, but it meant everything. The Velthari administrators on Earth surrendered without resistance. They had watched the footage from the battle at the system boundary. They knew what human ships and soldiers could do. There was no point in fighting. High Commissioner Velthos, the alien governor of Earth, requested a meeting with the human leadership. He wanted to negotiate. He wanted to understand what humanity intended to do now that they had returned. Council Chair Ryan Parker agreed to meet him. The location was what had once been Geneva, now a sprawling entertainment complex for wealthy aliens who came to vacation on the exotic world. Ryan walked through streets filled with alien architecture, alien plants, and alien faces that watched him with a mixture of curiosity and fear. He found Velthos waiting in a garden that had been designed to showcase plants from 100 different worlds. None of them were from Earth. The Velthari commissioner was tall, even for his species. His scales were silver with patterns of gold, a sign of noble birth. He had ruled Earth for 500 years, longer than many human civilizations had lasted. "Thank you for meeting with me," Velthos said. His voice was calm, but Ryan could see the tension in his posture. "You wanted to talk, so talk." Velthos gestured at the sky, where human warships were visible even during daylight. "You've already proven that you can defeat us in battle. Your ships are faster. Your soldiers are stronger. Your technology is more advanced than anything we expected. You could destroy us if you wanted to." Ryan said nothing. He simply waited. "Why haven't you?" Velthos asked. "Why haven't you begun the conquest? You have every reason to want revenge. We took your home. We exiled your people to die on the worst planets in the galaxy. If our positions were reversed, we would already be destroying your worlds." Ryan considered the question carefully before answering. "Because we remember what it felt like to be the weaker species. We remember being forced from our home by people who thought they were superior. We remember the fear and the anger and the helplessness." He stepped closer to Velthos, and the alien involuntarily moved back. It was an instinctive reaction, the response of prey to a predator. Ryan noticed it and felt no satisfaction. "We didn't come back to conquer," he continued. "We came back to reclaim what was taken from us. Nothing more, nothing less. Earth belongs to humanity. It always has, but we don't need to destroy the Dominion to make that true." Velthos tilted his head, clearly struggling to understand. "You have power over us. Why would you not use it?" "Because power without wisdom is just destruction. My ancestors left Earth as refugees, defeated and humiliated. I won't let humanity become the thing we hated. I won't let us become you." The words hung in the air between them. "The Dominion will not accept this," Velthos said finally. "They will send their full armada, 12,000 ships, the largest military force ever assembled. They will try to crush you and restore the quarantine." Ryan smiled, and there was something in that expression that made Velthos take another step back. "Let them come. Let them bring their entire fleet. Let them bring everything they have. You cannot possibly defeat such a force." Ryan turned and looked up at the alien sky. A sky that should have been filled with familiar stars, but instead showed him constellations that had been changed by 3,000 years of Velthari occupation. 3,000 years ago, my people left this planet in fear. They were broken and beaten and hopeless. But they survived. They grew stronger. They became something new. He looked back at Velthos. The Velthari gave humanity the gift of hardship, and we turned it into power. Now we're going to show your dominion exactly what that power looks like. And when it's over, the galaxy will never underestimate humanity again. Velthos watched the human leader walk away, and for the first time in his 500 years of existence, he understood what it meant to face a species that could not be broken. The Dominion had created their own worst enemy, and now that enemy had come home. The Dominion Armada arrived 6 months later. 12,000 warships emerged from hyperspace in perfect formation, blocking out the stars with their massive hulls. It was the largest military force the galaxy had ever seen, assembled from dozens of species across 1,000 worlds. Admiral Kevin Rhodes stood on the bridge of the flagship Homeward and watched the enemy fleet fill his view screen. He was old for a military commander, nearly 300 years old, with white hair and a calm expression that never seemed to change. He had spent his entire life preparing for this moment. "Admiral, enemy fleet is assuming attack formation. They're charging weapons." Kevin nodded slowly. "How many ships do we have?" 800 combat vessels, sir, plus support craft and civilian transports." The numbers were not encouraging. The Dominion outnumbered them 15 to 1. By any conventional calculation, the human fleet should be annihilated within hours. But Kevin had seen the research. He had studied the data that showed how much humanity had evolved since the exile. He had watched the footage from the battle at the system boundary, where 300 human ships had destroyed 200 Velthari vessels with minimal losses. The Dominion was about to learn that numbers were not everything. Open a channel to their command ship. The alien admiral appeared on screen. His name was Zenthos, a warrior of the Varathi species. The Varathi were considered the most fearsome fighters in the Dominion. Their armies had conquered worlds. Their fleets had crushed rebellions across the galaxy. Zenthos himself had never lost a battle in 300 years of service. "Humans," Zenthos growled. "You have violated the sacred quarantine. You have attacked Dominion vessels. You have seized a protected world. For these crimes, you will be destroyed." Kevin remained calm. "Before you give that order, I would like to send you something." He gestured to his communications officer, who transmitted a data package to the Dominion fleet. Battle simulations. Comparative analysis of human and alien capabilities. Projected casualty figures based on encounters with Velthari forces. For nearly a minute, Zenthos said nothing. Kevin could imagine him reviewing the data, watching simulations that showed human ships cutting through Dominion formations, like lightning through clouds. "This is propaganda," Zenthos said finally. "Fabricated data designed to frighten us. It's the truth. You can verify it yourself. We are not the same species you exiled 3,000 years ago. We have evolved. We have changed, and we have become something your Dominion cannot defeat." Zenthos made a sound that might have been a laugh. "No species can defeat the combined might of the Dominion. You are one race against hundreds. You are 800 ships against 12,000. Mathematics alone guarantees your destruction." Kevin stood and walked closer to the view screen. His movements were slow and deliberate, the movements of a predator who knows he has all the time in the world. 3,000 years ago, your ancestors looked at humanity and saw a threat. They were right to be afraid. We were dangerous even then. But instead of trying to work with us, instead of trying to understand us, they chose to exile us. They sent us to the harshest places in the galaxy, hoping we would die. He smiled, and there was something ancient and patient in that expression. Instead, we got stronger. Every generation was tougher than the one before. Every century brought new adaptations, new abilities, new powers. Your ancestors tried to destroy us. And instead, they created something far more dangerous than anything they could have imagined. Kevin turned to his tactical officer. "Show them." The view screen changed to display a live feed from a human cruiser. A single soldier stood in the cargo bay, surrounded by combat drones programmed to fight with the same capabilities as Dominion soldiers. The demonstration began. The human moved with speed that was almost impossible to follow. He flowed through the attacking drones like water through rocks, destroying them with strikes that bent metal and shattered electronics. Within 30 seconds, 40 combat drones lay broken on the floor. The soldier was not even breathing hard. "Every human on every ship in our fleet can do what you just saw," Kevin said. "Our pilots have reflexes 3 times faster than your best warriors. Our gunners can make shots that your targeting computers cannot calculate. Our engineers can repair damage faster than you can inflict it." He leaned forward. "You can attack us. You can throw your entire fleet at us. But you will not win. You will lose ships by the thousands. You will lose soldiers by the millions. And at the end of it all, you will have achieved nothing except proving to the galaxy that the Dominion can be beaten." The transmission from Zenthos remained silent for a long moment. When the alien admiral spoke again, his voice had changed. The arrogance was gone. In its place was something that sounded almost like respect. "What do you want?" Kevin felt a tension he had not even realized he was carrying begin to ease. "We want peace. We want trade. We want to rejoin galactic civilization as equals, not as subordinates or as conquerors. We want to build something better than what existed before." Under said. "And if we refuse, if we choose to fight anyway, then you will lose. Not today, maybe not tomorrow, but eventually. We will keep fighting until there is nothing left of your dominion but memory. And I think you know that's true." For 3 days, the two fleets faced each other across the void. The entire galaxy watched and waited to see what would happen. Would the Dominion attack? Would humanity stand down? Would the galaxy be plunged into the most destructive war in its history? On the 4th day, the Dominion fleet began to withdraw. 1 year later, humanity formally rejoined galactic civilization. The old quarantine was lifted. Trade routes were established. Diplomatic missions were exchanged. A new era of cooperation began between humans and the species that had once feared them. Dr. Laura Kim stood in a restored forest in what had once been North America. Around her, Earth plants grew alongside alien vegetation in careful harmony. The work of healing the planet had begun, though it would take centuries to complete. A young Velthari student stood beside her, studying the ecosystem with undisguised wonder. He was part of an exchange program, one of the first aliens to live among humans since the exile. "Your species is remarkable," the student said. "You were broken and you rebuilt yourselves. You were exiled and you returned stronger. You had every reason to want revenge, but you chose peace instead." Laura thought about all the generations who had lived and died on harsh worlds, dreaming of a home they would never see. She thought about Commander Daniel Hayes and his daughter Lucy, who had watched Earth disappear through a ship window 3,000 years ago. "We had a long time to think about what kind of people we wanted to be," she said. "When we finally came home, we wanted to be worthy of it." She looked up at the sky, where human and alien ships passed each other in peaceful transit. "We are the children of Earth. We carry her strength, her resilience, her capacity for both destruction and creation. And now, finally, we are home." The Velthari had been right to fear humanity, but they had been wrong about what that fear should have taught them. Humans were never meant to be contained. They were meant to grow. They were meant to overcome. They were meant to become something greater than anyone could have predicted. And now there was nothing in the galaxy strong enough to stop them. The story of human exile had ended. The story of human triumph had just begun.